2025 Drive Car of the Year. Sam, we can't let on, but this is our favourite part of Drive Car of the Year. It's the off-road categories.
Absolutely.
And some really, really strong contenders and really, in-depth testing this year to get to this point.
It's definitely my favourite segment, and I think it's a really interesting one. We've got a few carryover champions here, but we've also got an all-new segment, which is a debut for Drive Car of the Year. In terms of price, we've actually got a really nice range here. So nothing's over $150,000 on one end, but you've got one option, that's SsangYong Musso, at well under 50 grand, and it's a bit of a dark horse. You do get a lot of ute for the money, but they're all interesting in their own right. Let's have a closer look at all of these segment winners.
Our first category is the best off-road SUV under $80,000, which goes to the defending champion, the Ford Everest Sport V6. The judges all agreed that the combination of a smooth and torquey diesel V6 power plant, thoughtful interior and well-integrated technology underpinned the appeal of this 7-seat SUV. Yes, there's room for 7 on board, and the driving experience on-road is impressive considering the amount of towing and off-road capability you also have in the Everest. It's a bit of a do-it-all master these days that still provides quality and value for money.
What a tough segment this one is. Ford Everest up against legends, even though they're new and heavily new, like the Toyota Prado, and yet the Everest comes out on top. This is very, very practical and a common sense choice for Australian buyers, especially those of you with families, because we know it tows, we know it's good off-road, we know it's good on-road, and it's comfortable here inside the cabin. Ford's portrait-style infotainment system and control centre, interactive driver display, really, really good. The fact that there's so much space, there's clever storage, and this is a genuine family-focused four-wheel drive. The Ford Everest is a very, very high-quality vehicle.
This Everest is quite a good off-roader. Now, one thing I will note is that the vehicle we have at the moment, a V6 Sport, which would be our pick of the range overall in terms of inclusions and value for money. It comes with 20-inch wheels and corresponding relatively not aggressive tyres, but you can do 18-inch wheels and all-terrain tyres as a no-cost option. And for those of us who want to go off-road, do a bit of four-wheel driving and exploring, those 18s would 100% be the best way to go. But as we are sitting at the moment, we are on the 20s, so let's see how we perform up this hill. Now, in terms of the platform, the powertrain and the chassis, this is very similar to what you have in a Ford Ranger, especially through the front suspension, independent suspension, steering, engines and gearboxes. But at the rear, we've actually got a Watts linkage setup, which is more tuned for on-road compliance and comfort, and it's got coil springs instead of leaf springs. Now, that might be a little bit limited for travel, and it puts a bit of pressure on the Everest's off-road traction control system, along with a locking differential, which I will stick on now. And then what you find you have to do with this Everest is just give it a little extra dab of momentum at times off-road, just to pop it up and over some of the more challenging sections. And there's good traction control there, but in comparison to others in the segment, you just need to give it a little dose of extra throttle for the car to figure out what it needs to do to get up and moving over those tricky sections. But that being said, this car is quite capable off-road, and if you did have those 18s fitted with an all-terrain tyre, correct tyre pressures and that sort of thing, this will do more than enough, I think, for what most families want to do on those weekend adventures and holidays.
Our next category is the best luxury off-road SUV under $150,000, which sees the repeat winner Land Rover Defender holding onto its crown. Our favourite is the diesel-powered D350 X Dynamic SE, which impressed judges with its silky, 6-cylinder, 700 Nm power plant, and also the elegant and practical interior and class-leading combination of ride comfort, refinement and off-road capability. Air suspension gives great bump absorption on-road, but also loads of off-road ground clearance, while the recent update to onboard technology like infotainment helps this Defender to stay feeling fresh.
Now, luxury and off-road capability are two very different disciplines. It's all well and good to have a luxury cabin that's got beautiful soft pile carpet and leather trim, and it looks fantastic. But then how does that behave when you go off-road and you fill it up with mud? Because that is what's going to happen with a vehicle like the Land Rover Defender. And I think the word that jumps out more than any other when you're inside the cabin is practicality, or maybe you could use utilitarian if you wanted to. It's got hard-wearing fabrics, it's got clever coverings like rubber floor mats, thick rubber floor mats that are easy to clean out, robust seat coverings, very practical cabin for off-road work. And then the other factor that you notice inside the cabin, which makes an enormous difference, is visibility. Because when you're working your way up or down a tight track through a really narrow section of bush, you need to be able to see where the edges of the vehicle are and to see where you're positioning the vehicle. And this does it particularly well. The last factor I think that makes off-roading so easy in this vehicle is the control system. So controlling your off-road drive modes and low range and diff locks and all of those things is really, really easy in the Land Rover Defender, even if you're a first-timer.
Well, we all know how four-wheel drive enthusiasts and the hairy-chested sort of guys feel about four-wheel drives that don't have things like live axles and a ladder chassis. Generally speaking, they're seen to be not a real four-wheel drive. For full reference, part of my brain is wired exactly like that. But driving this vehicle really forces your brain to rewire itself in terms of off-road performance. Now, we've got independent suspension all around here. We've got a bit of a monocoque unibody chassis that uses aluminium and steel. And we've also got height adjustable air suspension. We've got no diff locks either. We've got actually electronically controlled, variably locking diffs, both in the center and the rear of this Defender. And it all combines in a way, because of the way it's calibrated and tuned, into something that is, quite frankly, exceptionally good off-road. Now, tyre diameter is actually pretty big. We've got around 32.5 inches of tyre diameter. So even with 19s, you know, it's not perfect, but you do still have a little bit of sidewall at play there. And you can opt for a more aggressive tyre from the factory, or even option up to a Goodyear Duratrack all-terrain, which is an excellent off-road tyre. But even as we have here, we've aired down the tyres just a little bit. We're cruising up a hill at a very low speed, and the car just does it. It doesn't take much driver input or change. It sits level, it's stable, throttle inputs are nice and smooth, and the car just gets the job done. You can kind of feel when it takes over effectively. Lots of different ingredients, but the fact is that it all just combines really nicely to make this vehicle that is really, really good off-road, but at the same time, refined and smooth and capable and easy. It all just comes together really, really well in this Land Rover Defender.
Our next category is the best four-wheel drive ute under $50,000, and it's the KGM SsangYong Musso that successfully defends its crown this year. It's often referred to as a dark horse in the office, and the Musso continued to impress the judges this year with its refined on-road driving demeanour, comfortable ride quality and responsive powertrain. And it offers an impressively spacious second row as well for workmates and family members alike. And considering you can get it in its top specification form still under $50,000, it offers an impressive level of kit and value for money.
The established dual cab brigade could learn something from the SsangYong Musso, and that's in the second row. This has got proper room for family buyers, and let's face it, most people who buy a dual cab and live in the city use it, if not all the time, as a default family vehicle. So space in the second row is at a premium. Into the front of the cabin, and this really is an impressive vehicle for the price point. You've got heated and ventilated seats, they're comfortable, visibility's great, the control systems are good, big screen, clever storage. This works really well for those of you who spend 80 or 90% of your time around town and 10 or 20% of it off-road. It's still good off-road. But the coil spring rear end means that this is a really comfortable dual cab to drive around town, and cabin ergonomics are top shelf, especially for the price point. If you're on a budget, you really should be looking at the SsangYong Musso.
Now, in terms of off-road performance, this Musso is, it's not the best in the segment, but it's actually a lot better than you might give it credit for overall. That's kind of the biggest weakness of this Musso off-road is clearance around the sort of front area, the approach angle, and ground clearance around those front wheels. But it's actually not too bad once you start driving this thing off-road. We've got low range, we've got an auto-locking rear differential, which you can't forget to turn on, which is one good thing. And you've got a fair amount of stability here. Don't forget, we've got the long wheelbase XLV model, and some extra wheelbase does help when you're going up and down hills in terms of feeling stable. And the fact that you've got a good quality 360-degree camera system in a four-wheel drive ute at this price, well, that really underpins the value of this Musso, and it shows why it's such a favourite of ours. As we cruise up slowly, got a bit of wheel spin at the back there, boom, that rear diff lock just kicked in and you feel it kind of thud as it comes on. And the trick there with this car is to actually keep the throttle happening, so momentum keeps going forward and that diff lock stays engaged. It's not as good as a selectable diff locker that stays on all the time, but you can manage it a little bit with your own driving style. I know a lot of people don't even have this car on their consideration set, but they should.
The next category is one of Australia's most popular and competitive. That is the best four-wheel drive ute under $100,000. And it's the Ford Ranger that has held on to the title here, beating out the likes of Mitsubishi's Triton and Isuzu's updated D-Max for 2 years in a row. When you look at the broad range of skills that a modern-day ute must undertake, the Ranger really impressed the judges, mostly in its overall versatility across the board. There's loads of technology included across the range and an impressively refined driving experience for a ute, but still you've got that strong focus on the credentials that are important, with things like payloads, off-road capability, and towing capacities.
Ford Ranger has been at the top of the dual cab segment for some time now, and that shows no signs of slowing down. And the biggest string in its bow is that it is as comfortable and useful on-road as it is capable off-road. We know that these kinds of vehicles need to be something like a Swiss Army knife. They need to do everything for everybody, whether you're a family buyer, use it for work, off-road, tow, whatever it might be. And the Ranger has a cabin that's perfect for off-road work because it's tough, it's hard-wearing, it looks like it's built to last, it's built from high-quality materials, and then all of the control centre is really, really easy to use. The portrait screen, same as Everest, is fantastic. The configurable driver's display is a really good one as well. We like the storage. I've got my phone in there at the moment in the wireless charger, but there's one there for passengers in that little shelf so that it won't flap around and fall through the cabin there as well. Plenty of places to put little items, but then of course useful cup holders as well that are here that don't get in the way of the gear shifter, and really easy to control your four-wheel drive modes, high and low range. But the Ford Ranger, top of the dual cab segment, and with very good reason.
This Ford Ranger uses size to its advantage off-road in a couple of different ways. Number one, we've got an excellent 3-litre turbocharged V6 diesel available in the Ranger, similar to what you get in the Amarok, obviously, and this engine is one that just feels nice and easy and pliable off-road. You don't need to really rev it up to access torque, and it means you can kind of crawl along with good levels of control. It's relatively similar to other vehicles in the four-wheel drive ute segment because they've all got relatively long wheelbases, and this has one of the longest in the game actually. You do tend to bottom out around the midsection in terms of your breakover angle. That'll be the first place you'll hit off-road. But otherwise, if you drive around those sorts of things, this Ranger feels quite capable and confident off-road. We've got good technology here. The downhill assist function is actually one of the better ones around. You can control the speed as you're going downhill via the steering wheel, which is nice and easy. And it does a really good job of slowing down momentum as the vehicle lifts wheels and wants to run away. It keeps things really well controlled, which is good for amateurs and experienced four-wheel drivers alike. It means you can just stay off the brakes a little bit more and keep an eye on what you're doing in front. Now, this electric power steering is nice and light. It makes things easy off-road, especially when you're doing tight maneuvers and three-point turns. But on this uphill climb here, we'll see what this Ranger is like. We've got the diff lock engaged. We don't have any driving modes to dip into here. but we'll see what the off-road traction control system can do using the length of that wheelbase through the ruts. This thing feels nice and stable. Going forward, nice and easy actually. We're finding traction, and it's done that hill climb quite easily.
A new category for 2025 is the best four-wheel drive ute under $150,000, and it's the V8-powered Chevy Silverado 1500 LTZ that defeated the likes of the Ford F-150 and Ram 1500 this year. Now, the Toyota Tundra wasn't included because its price came in over that threshold. But here, it's the combination of a comfortable interior, bristling with technology, loads of space, and an excellent naturally aspirated 6.2-litre petrol V8 that underpins the main appeal of this Chevy 1500. The on-road driving experience is smooth and easy.
There's a lot to like about the Chevrolet Silverado, but before we get to the front seat, let's start in the second row. This has, quite simply, an enormous amount of space in the second row, and it puts even large four-wheel drives like 300 series Land Cruiser and Nissan Patrol to shame. If you have to move a family around, especially if you've got kids who are getting taller in their teenage years, or you've got 4 or 5 adults you need to move around in comfort, these big full-size American trucks are the only way to do it, and the Chevy Silverado in the second row is luxurious and comfortable. In the driver's seat though, I really like what Chevrolet's done here. Huge interactive driver screen, infotainment screen that is really easy to use and responsive. A massive amount of storage, as you'd expect. You know, they get a bit of criticism, some of these American trucks, for being as big as they are. But if you need to do a specific set of tasks, off-road, long-distance touring, towing, those kinds of things, if you live in the rural areas, there is nothing that does it as easily as these do it. They're comfortable. They're user-friendly, they've got an enormous amount of space, and for those of you who need something of this size, they're practical as well. Now, you will have heard us say this a few times about the Chevrolet Silverado 1500, but one of the smart things that GMSV has done is allowed you to effectively pick your poison. So the one that we're testing at the moment is the more road-focused variant, and then of course, there's a more off-road focused variant with some modifications that make it more practical for off-road use. The strong points though, they are comfortable. The ride quality is fantastic. They just waft along these country roads. The engine really comes into its own in terms of efficiency. You're going to use well under 13 litres per 100 kilometres when you're touring. So that is more efficient than you would have thought for a vehicle of this size. Big V8 engine up front. Lazy, effortless, doesn't have to work too hard. You know, at 80 kilometres an hour like I'm doing now, it's 1500 RPM. And that's largely to do with the quality of the automatic transmission that works really well with that engine. Now, these do get criticised a little bit for payload, but a lot of that is done in order to allow you to tow the biggest trailer possible in terms of the gross combined mass of the vehicle. So it's fair to say, you're probably not buying this if you need to carry 1,200 kilos in the tray regularly. That's when you'd be looking at a very specific type of work vehicle as opposed to this. But for family buyers and people who use these for long distance touring, the payload's fine. And then obviously the tow capability of these is as good as it is and as safe as it is, because it's a big vehicle, long wheelbase, all of those factors that we talk about regularly. And this is just generally an incredibly comfortable, flexible, and enjoyable vehicle to drive.
So, which is your favourite of our picks for the best off-roaders of 2025? Let us know in the comments below which one you would prefer to drive away in. And if you want to know more about the Land Rover Defender, check out our 2025 Drive Car of the Year Luxury Awards.